The autumn air hung heavy, with the scent of dying leaves and distant wood smoke, as the sun began its slow descent behind the rolling hills of Pine Ridge. What had started as a perfect Saturday afternoon was about to become a day that would forever change a small town's understanding of heroism, brotherhood, and the true meaning of family. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. In a modest two-story house on Maple Street, 7-year-old Tommy Rodriguez sat cross-legged on the living room floor, his small fingers carefully arranging toy cars in neat rows. His father, Miguel Rodriguez, lay stretched out on the worn leather couch behind him, his chest rising and falling in labored breaths that had been getting worse all week. Miguel was a proud man, a veteran who had served 2 tours overseas before coming home to work construction and raise his son alone after his wife passed 3 years earlier. The sound of distant thunder rolled across the horizon, but it wasn't a storm approaching Pine Ridge that October evening. It was something far more powerful, the collective roar of 200 motorcycles making their way through the countryside on the annual Thunder Run, a charity ride organized by the Iron Brotherhood Motorcycle Club to raise money for local veterans' families. If you believe in the power of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, in second chances, and the strength that comes from standing together when it matters most, then please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Tell us in the comments where you're watching this story from, because what you're about to witness is a testament to the fact that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear leather and ride on steel horses. At the head of that thundering convoy rode Marcus Steele Washington, a man whose presence commanded respect without him ever having to ask for it. Standing 6'4" with shoulders broad enough to carry the weight of the world, Steele had been leading the Iron Brotherhood for over 15 years. His weathered face told stories of battles fought both overseas and on the streets back home. But his eyes, those deep brown eyes that had seen too much pain and not enough justice, held a gentleness that surprised people who only saw the intimidating exterior. Steele hadn't always been a biker. 20 years ago, he'd been Sergeant Marcus Washington, leading men through the unforgiving terrain of Afghanistan. He'd come home with medals, nightmares, and a profound understanding that some battles never really end, they just change location. The Brotherhood of the Motorcycle Club had given him what the civilian world couldn't. A family that understood the language of loyalty, sacrifice, and unconditional support. Riding beside him was his second in command, Patricia Phoenix Chen, a former Army medic whose small frame belied the fire that burned within her. Phoenix had earned her road name not just for her red hair, but for her ability to rise from whatever ashes life threw at her and help others do the same. Behind them rode nearly 200 men and women from chapters across 3 states, all united by a common purpose: to honor those who had served and to support the families they'd left behind. The Iron Brotherhood wasn't your typical motorcycle club. They didn't deal in the shadows or operate outside the law. Instead, they channeled their collective strength into community service, veteran advocacy, and standing up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves. Their patches bore not symbols of rebellion, but emblems of service: the American flag, the POW, MIA symbol, and their club motto, Honor Through Action. As the convoy rolled through Pine Ridge's main street, residents stepped out of shops and homes to wave and show their support. Children pointed excitedly at the impressive motorcycles, their chrome gleaming in the golden hour light. This was the kind of small town where everybody knew everybody, where the local diners still served coffee in thick ceramic mugs, and the hardware store owner knew every customer by name. But not everyone in Pine Ridge was celebrating that evening. In the house on Maple Street, Miguel Rodriguez was fighting a battle he was losing. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So, if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Daddy, are you okay?" Tommy asked, turning around to see his father clutching his chest, his face pale and covered in sweat. Miguel tried to smile for his son, but the crushing weight in his chest made it impossible to speak. The pain had been building for weeks, sharp, stabbing sensations that he'd tried to dismiss as stress or maybe pulled muscles from his construction work. He couldn't afford to miss work, couldn't afford a hospital visit, and most importantly, couldn't afford to leave Tommy alone in the world. As a single father working paycheck to paycheck, Miguel had let his health insurance lapse when the construction company cut his hours 6 months earlier. He'd been telling himself that he was strong, that he could push through whatever this was, that he just needed to rest. But as he lay on that couch, struggling to draw breath, he realized with terrifying clarity that he might have waited too long. "Daddy?" Tommy's voice was smaller now, frightened. He'd seen this before when Mommy got sick, the way adults tried to hide their pain behind weak smiles and whispered reassurances that everything would be okay. Miguel reached out with a trembling hand and touched his son's face. "Tommy," he whispered, his voice barely audible, "I need you to be brave, okay? I need you to go get help." But who could a 7-year-old boy turn to in a moment like this? Miguel's parents lived 3 states away. His neighbors were elderly and wouldn't be able to help. The nearest hospital was 20 minutes away by car, and Miguel was in no condition to drive. Outside, the rumble of motorcycles was getting closer, the sound echoing off the houses as the convoy made its way through the residential streets. Tommy had watched from his bedroom window many times as groups of bikers passed through town, always wondering what it would be like to ride on one of those powerful machines. His father had told him stories about the good ones, the ones who helped veterans and raised money for charity, but Tommy had never actually met any of them. As Miguel's breathing became more labored, Tommy made a decision that would change everything. With tears streaming down his face, he ran to the front door and threw it open, stepping onto the porch just as the first motorcycles rounded the corner onto Maple Street. The sight that greeted him was overwhelming, an endless stream of leather-clad riders on machines that seemed as powerful as dragons. But Tommy didn't run back inside. Instead, he did something that would echo through that quiet neighborhood and beyond for years to come. He ran into the street, directly into the path of the lead motorcycle, waving his small arms and crying out the words that would stop 200 hearts simultaneously. "Please help. My daddy can't breathe." The Brotherhood response, 6 to 9:30. Steele saw the little boy before he heard the words, his trained instincts immediately recognizing distress even from a distance. He raised his right hand, the universal signal for the convoy to stop, and the thundering procession came to a halt in a symphony of engines winding down and boots hitting pavement. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the sound of Tommy's sobs and the urgent words spilling from his lips. "He's inside. He's on the couch. He keeps holding his chest and he can't talk. And I don't know what to do, and I'm scared, and please, please help him." Steele was off his bike and kneeling beside Tommy before the boy had finished speaking. Up close, the big man was even more intimidating, his weathered face marked by scars and his massive frame casting a shadow over the small boy. But when he spoke, his voice was as gentle as a father's lullaby. "Hey there, little man," Steele said, placing a careful hand on Tommy's shoulder. "What's your name?" "Tommy," the boy stammered, wiping his nose on his sleeve. "Well, Tommy, my name is Steele, and these are my brothers and sisters. We're here to help, okay? Can you tell me where your daddy is?" Tommy pointed toward the house with a trembling finger. "Inside. On the couch. He can't breathe good." Phoenix was already moving, her medical training kicking in as she grabbed her emergency kit from her saddlebag. Steele turned to the convoy behind him, where nearly 200 riders had dismounted and were waiting for direction. With a series of hand signals that spoke the silent language of the Brotherhood, he organized them with military precision. "Phoenix, medical assessment," he commanded quietly. "Throttle, call 911, and clear a path for the ambulance. Hammer, crowd control, keep the neighbors back but informed. Angel, contact St. Mary's Hospital, and let them know we might have a cardiac emergency incoming." As Phoenix disappeared into the house, Steele kept his focus on Tommy, recognizing that the boy's terror was almost as critical an emergency as whatever was happening inside. "Tommy, has your daddy been sick for a while?" The boy nodded vigorously. He keeps saying his chest hurts, but he won't go to the doctor. He says we can't afford it. He says if he goes to the hospital, we won't have money for food. The words hit Steele like a physical blow. Here was a man, probably a veteran based on the military precision with which he'd apparently raised his son, choosing between his health and his child's welfare. It was a story Steele had heard too many times, a tragedy that played out in households across America where pride, poverty, and a broken healthcare system conspired to rob families of their fathers, their providers, their heroes. Inside the house, Phoenix was conducting a rapid assessment of Miguel Rodriguez. His pulse was rapid and irregular, his skin was clammy and gray, and he was experiencing classic signs of what appeared to be a heart attack. She immediately began administering first aid while calling out vital signs to Throttle, who was relaying information to the 911 dispatcher. "Sir, can you hear me?" Phoenix asked, checking Miguel's pupils and pulse points. "Your son brought us here to help. We're going to take care of you, but I need you to stay conscious if you can." Miguel's eyes fluttered open, and through his pain, he saw this woman in leather and denim working over him with the skilled hands of a medical professional. "Tommy," he whispered. "He's safe," Phoenix assured him. "He's outside with my club president. That boy of yours is brave as hell. He flagged down 200 bikers to save his father's life." As the ambulance sirens grew closer, Steele learned more about the Rodriguez family from Tommy's frightened but increasingly trusting responses to his gentle questions. Miguel was a construction worker and Army veteran who had been raising Tommy alone since his wife died of cancer 3 years earlier. They had no close family nearby, no church community to lean on, and no financial safety net to fall back on. "He works really hard," Tommy explained, his small hand now trustingly held in Steele's massive one. "Sometimes he doesn't eat dinner so I can have more. And he always makes sure I have school clothes and stuff, but he never buys anything for himself." The picture that emerged was heartbreakingly familiar to Steele and many of the bikers gathered around them. Miguel Rodriguez was a proud veteran who had served his country overseas only to come home and fight a different kind of war, the daily battle of single parenthood, financial insecurity, and a healthcare system that seemed designed to fail people exactly like him. When Phoenix emerged from the house, her expression was grim but determined. "Massive MI," she reported quietly to Steele, using the medical abbreviation for myocardial infarction. "He's stable for now, but he needs a cardiac catheterization immediately. The ambulance is 2 minutes out." Steele nodded, then turned back to Tommy. "Buddy, your daddy is very sick, but the doctors are going to take really good care of him. The ambulance is going to take him to the hospital, and we're going to make sure you're not alone, okay?" Tommy's eyes widened with fresh terror. "But what if he dies like Mommy did? What happens to me?" The question hung in the air like a weight that threatened to crush everyone within earshot. Steele felt the familiar tightness in his chest that came when he was reminded of all the ways the world could fail its most vulnerable people. But he also felt something else, the presence of his brotherhood behind him, 200 people who had stopped their lives to help a stranger and his son. As the ambulance rounded the corner, its red and blue lights painting the suburban street in urgent colors, Steele made a decision that would transform not just Tommy's life, but the entire town of Pine Ridge. "Tommy," he said, kneeling down to meet the boy's eyes directly, "do you know what a brotherhood means?" The boy shook his head. "It means family. It means that when one person hurts, we all hurt. When one person needs help, we all help. Your daddy served his country, just like many of us did. That makes you family, and family doesn't get left behind." St. Mary's Hospital had never seen anything like it. As Miguel Rodriguez was rushed into emergency surgery, the parking lot filled with motorcycles. 200 bikers, who had started the day on a charity ride, had instead become a support network for a family they'd never met before that afternoon. Steele stayed with Tommy in the pediatric waiting area, while Phoenix coordinated with the medical staff to ensure Miguel received the best possible care. Other club members spread out through the hospital, some donating blood when they learned the blood bank was running low, others coordinating with hospital social services to understand what resources might be available for the Rodriguez family. As the hours stretched on, the true character of the Iron Brotherhood revealed itself. These weren't the stereotypical bikers that Hollywood had portrayed for decades. They were teachers and mechanics, nurses and military veterans, business owners and retirees, people from all walks of life, united by their commitment to service and their understanding that strength meant protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Angel, a soft-spoken woman with silvering hair, who worked as a school counselor, sat with Tommy and helped him with homework he'd brought from school. Hammer, despite his intimidating appearance and heavily tattooed arms, turned out to be a pediatric nurse who was able to explain to Tommy in age-appropriate terms what was happening to his father. "Your daddy's heart is like a muscle," Hammer explained gently, "and sometimes muscles get hurt and need fixing. The doctors are really good at fixing hearts, and they're going to make your daddy feel much better." Meanwhile, Throttle had been quietly working his phone, reaching out to contacts throughout the veteran community. What he discovered made the situation even more heartbreaking and urgent. Miguel Rodriguez had been awarded a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star for his service in Afghanistan, but he'd never applied for veterans' benefits because he didn't know he was eligible for them. Classic story. Throttle reported to Steele as they stood in the hospital corridor. Guy comes home with PTSD, gets overwhelmed by bureaucracy, falls through every crack in the system. He's been working construction jobs without insurance, paying out of pocket for his son's health care, burning through whatever savings he had when his wife got sick. Steele's jaw tightened. What about family services? Child protective services? If Miguel doesn't make it through surgery, Tommy goes into the foster system, Phoenix said, joining the conversation with fresh information from the hospital social worker. No next of kin listed, no guardian designated. The social worker says they'll try to keep him local, but there's no guarantee. The thought of Tommy being separated from everything familiar, potentially shuttled between foster homes, was unacceptable to Steele. He'd seen too many military children lost in a system that was supposed to protect them, but he'd also seen what was possible when good people decided to take action instead of just hoping someone else would handle the problem. What do we need to do? Steele asked. Phoenix consulted the notes she'd been taking. Short term, someone needs to be designated as temporary guardian if Miguel is incapacitated. Long term, Miguel needs help navigating the veteran benefits system, health insurance, probably financial assistance, and definitely a support network. Steele looked around at his brotherhood, scattered throughout the hospital waiting areas, and felt a familiar surge of pride in what they represented. Then that's what we do. At 11:47 p.m., Dr. Sarah Martinez emerged from the cardiac surgery unit with news that brought tears to eyes that hadn't cried in years. Miguel Rodriguez had survived the surgery, and the prognosis was good. The blockage in his coronary artery had been cleared, a stent had been placed, and while he would need ongoing cardiac rehabilitation and medication, he was expected to make a full recovery. Tommy was asleep in the waiting room, curled up in a chair with his head on Steele's leather jacket, when Dr. Martinez delivered the news. Steele gently woke the boy and watched as relief, joy, and exhaustion battled across his small face. "Can I see him?" Tommy asked. "He's sleeping right now," Dr. Martinez explained, "but he's going to be okay. You saved your father's life today by getting help when you did." As Tommy processed this information, Steele found himself thinking about the chain of events that had led to this moment. If the charity ride had taken a different route, if Tommy hadn't had the courage to run into the street, if the Brotherhood hadn't been in the right place at the right time, how many small miracles had aligned to save Miguel Rodriguez's life? But Steele also understood that miracles were just opportunities, and what mattered was what people chose to do with those opportunities. Over the next 3 days, as Miguel slowly recovered in the cardiac care unit, the Iron Brotherhood demonstrated what community could look like when people decided to truly care for one another. Throttle coordinated with a veterans advocate to help Miguel apply for disability benefits and healthcare coverage. Angel worked with Tommy's school to arrange tutoring and emotional support services. Hammer used his medical connections to ensure Miguel would have access to the best cardiac rehabilitation program in the region. But perhaps most importantly, they made sure that neither Miguel nor Tommy ever felt alone again. When Miguel was finally awake and alert enough for visitors, Steele was the first person to enter his room. The man lying in the hospital bed looked older than his 34 years, worn down by years of carrying burdens he should never have had to carry alone. "Mr. Rodriguez," Steele said quietly, "my name is Marcus Washington. My friends call me Steele. I'm the president of the Iron Brotherhood Motorcycle Club." Miguel tried to sit up straighter, his eyes showing a mixture of gratitude and confusion. "Tommy told me," he said, "you stopped for him. 200 bikers stopped for my son." Steele pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down, his presence somehow making the sterile hospital room feel warmer. "Tommy's a brave kid. Takes after his father, I'm guessing." Tears began to flow down Miguel's cheeks, and he didn't try to stop them. "I thought I was going to die and leave him alone. I kept thinking about his mother, about how I promised her I'd take care of him, and I was failing at that too." "Miguel," Steele said, using the man's first name deliberately, "you're not failing at anything. You're a single father who served his country and has been trying to raise a good kid while fighting battles you should never have had to fight alone. That ends now." What happened next in Pine Ridge would become the stuff of local legend, the kind of story that gets told and retold until it becomes part of a community's identity. The Iron Brotherhood didn't just help the Rodriguez family navigate the immediate crisis. They fundamentally changed how an entire town thought about taking care of its own. It started with practical matters. Throttle and his team of veteran advocates helped Miguel secure full disability benefits and healthcare coverage through the VA system. The process that Miguel had found overwhelming and impossible to navigate alone became manageable with experienced guides who knew how to work the system. Phoenix organized a medical support network, connecting Miguel with other heart attack survivors and ensuring he had access to the rehabilitation services he needed. Angel worked with Tommy's school to provide counseling and academic support, understanding that trauma can affect a child's ability to learn and grow. But the Brotherhood's influence extended far beyond the Rodriguez family. Inspired by what they'd witnessed, other community organizations began to step forward. The local VFW post, which had been struggling with declining membership, suddenly found new purpose in connecting with younger veterans who needed support. The Methodist Church started a food pantry specifically for military families. The town council initiated a program to identify and assist other veterans who might be falling through the cracks. Dr. Martinez, the cardiac surgeon who had saved Miguel's life, was so moved by the Brotherhood's response that she began advocating for better emergency financial assistance programs at the hospital. "I've seen too many families choose between healthcare and basic survival," she told the hospital board. What the Iron Brotherhood did for the Rodriguez family should be the standard, not the exception. 3 months after that October evening, Miguel Rodriguez returned to work, not in construction, but as a coordinator for a new veteran services program that the Iron Brotherhood had helped establish in Pine Ridge. His job was to identify veterans who needed assistance and connect them with resources, ensuring that no other military family would face their darkest moments alone. Tommy thrived in his new environment, surrounded by honorary aunts and uncles who treated him like family. He became the unofficial mascot of the Iron Brotherhood, attending family barbecues and charity events, his infectious smile and obvious joy serving as a reminder of why their work mattered. But perhaps the most significant transformation was in how Pine Ridge understood the meaning of community. The sight of 200 motorcycles, stopping everything to help a child in need, had shattered stereotypes and preconceptions. Citizens who had once crossed the street to avoid bikers now waved when the Iron Brotherhood rode through town. Local businesses displayed veterans' welcome signs and actively sought ways to support military families. 6 months after the incident on Maple Street, Steele received a letter that would stay with him for the rest of his life. It was written in careful 7-year-old handwriting, with drawings in the margins of motorcycles and stick figures holding hands. "Dear Steele," it read, "thank you for saving my daddy. Thank you for teaching me that family doesn't have to be just people who look like you or live in your house. Thank you for showing me that the scariest looking people can have the biggest hearts. When I grow up, I want to be like you and help people who need help." The letter was signed Tommy Rodriguez, your little brother forever, and attached to it was a drawing of a little boy standing in front of a group of motorcycles with the caption, "My family," written in crayon. That letter was framed and hung in the clubhouse of every Iron Brotherhood chapter across 3 states, serving as a daily reminder of their mission and their impact. But the ripple effects of that October evening continued to spread far beyond anything Tommy could have imagined. The story of the boy who stopped 200 bikers went viral on social media, shared millions of times by people hungry for proof that kindness still existed in the world. But more importantly, it inspired action. Other motorcycle clubs began organizing similar community outreach programs. Veterans organizations saw membership surge as people realized they could make a difference in their neighbors' lives. The annual Thunder Run charity ride, which had previously raised modest amounts for veteran services, became one of the largest charitable events in the region. Participants came from across the country, drawn not just by the cause, but by the story of what was possible when people chose to stop and help rather than simply drive by. Miguel Rodriguez became a sought-after speaker at veteran events, sharing his story and encouraging other veterans to seek help when they needed it. His message was simple but powerful. Pride is not worth dying for. Your family needs you alive more than they need you to be tough. Dr. Martinez led a campaign that resulted in the establishment of an Filer emergency fund at St. Mary's Hospital for families facing medical crises without insurance. The Tommy Rodriguez Emergency Fund provided immediate assistance for medications, procedures, and support services, ensuring that financial considerations would never again delay life-saving care. The town of Pine Ridge officially designated October 15th as Community Heroes Day, commemorating not just the Iron Brotherhood's intervention, but celebrating all the ways that ordinary people could make extraordinary differences in their neighbors' lives. 2 years later, on a warm September evening, Miguel Rodriguez stood in his backyard watching Tommy practice, riding a bicycle, a skill the boy had finally mastered with characteristic determination and the patient coaching of Uncle Steele. The yard was filled with the sounds of laughter and conversation as members of the Iron Brotherhood gathered for their monthly family barbecue. Miguel's health had fully recovered. His work with veteran services had earned him recognition from the state government. And most importantly, Tommy was thriving as a confident, happy 9-year-old who understood that family was measured not by blood, but by love and commitment. "Dad," Tommy called out as he pedaled past. "Watch this." He executed a careful turn around a cone that Phoenix had set up, his face glowing with pride and accomplishment. "I see you, buddy," Miguel called back, his voice carrying the kind of joy that comes from being grateful for every moment with your child. Steele approached, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing the relaxed expression that replaced his usual intensity during these family gatherings. "He's getting good," he observed, settling onto the deck beside Miguel. "Everything he does good," Miguel replied. "Kid's got his mother's determination and apparently inherited some of his old man's stubbornness." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching Tommy navigate his bicycle course with the focused concentration of a child who approaches every challenge as an adventure waiting to be conquered. "You know," Miguel said eventually, "I used to think strength meant handling everything alone. Military trained that into me. Be tough, don't show weakness, don't ask for help. Nearly killed me." Steele nodded, understanding the mindset from his own military experience. "Took me years to learn that real strength is knowing when to lean on your brothers. Tommy taught us that lesson better than anyone. He saved more than just my life that day," Miguel continued. "He saved my understanding of what family could be, what community should be." As if summoned by their conversation, Tommy abandoned his bicycle and ran over to the deck, breathless with excitement and ready to share the news of his latest cycling achievement. Steele lifted him onto his lap with the ease of practice, and Tommy immediately launched into a detailed description of his afternoon's accomplishments. Watching this interaction, Miguel felt the familiar surge of gratitude that had become a daily part of his emotional landscape. Tommy had gained not just one surrogate uncle, but an entire extended family of people who were committed to his well-being and success. More than that, Tommy was growing up with an understanding of service, community, and compassion that would shape the man he would become. 5 years after that October evening that changed everything, Tommy Rodriguez, now 12 years old, stood at a podium in the Pine Ridge Community Center, addressing an audience of several hundred people gathered for the annual Community Heroes Day celebration. He was no longer the frightened 7-year-old who had run into the street begging for help, but a confident young man who understood the power of courage and community. 5 years ago, Tommy began, his voice clear and steady. I learned that heroes don't always look like the people in movies. Sometimes they wear leather jackets and ride motorcycles. Sometimes they're doctors who work all night to save someone's life. Sometimes they're teachers who stay after school to help kids with homework. Sometimes they're neighbors who bring dinner when someone is sick. In the audience, Miguel Rodriguez wiped away tears as he listened to his son speak with the wisdom and confidence of someone who had been raised by an entire community. Surrounding Miguel were the familiar faces of the Iron Brotherhood, many of whom had become as close as biological family over the years. But the most important thing I learned, Tommy continued, is that we all have the chance to be heroes for someone else. We just have to choose to stop and help instead of driving by. As applause filled the community center, Steele felt a deep satisfaction that had nothing to do with recognition or gratitude. It was the satisfaction that came from knowing that a moment of choice, the choice to stop when a child needed help, had created ripples that would continue spreading for generations. The Iron Brotherhood's intervention in the Rodriguez family's crisis had indeed shattered Pine Ridge, but not in a destructive way. It had shattered assumptions, stereotypes, and the barriers that too often kept people from taking care of one another. In their place had grown something stronger, a community that understood that everyone deserved to be protected, supported, and valued. Tommy concluded his speech with words that would be remembered long after the applause faded. My dad always tells me that the best way to honor the people who helped us is to help someone else. So that's what we do. Every day, we look for chances to be someone's hero. Because you never know when a little kid might run into the street and change your life forever. As the celebration continued into the evening, with families sharing food and stories, and children playing under the watchful eyes of a community that had learned to truly care for its own, one truth remained clear. Sometimes the most powerful force in the world is the decision to stop and help when someone is crying for help. The Iron Brotherhood had arrived in Pine Ridge that day, planning to ride through on their way to somewhere else. Instead, they had found home, not just in a place, but in the understanding that family is created by choice, community is built by service, and heroes are made not by what they wear or how they look, but by what they choose to do when someone needs them most. And in a modest house on Maple Street, where a father and son went to sleep each night, grateful for every breath and every moment they had together, the lesson remained as clear as the October evening when it all began. Sometimes angels ride motorcycles, and sometimes the best way to save a life is to simply stop and listen when a child says, "Please help. My daddy can't breathe." If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that real heroes walk among us every day, then please like, comment, share, and subscribe to help us continue sharing stories of courage, compassion, and community. Tell us in the comments about a time when someone stopped to help you when you needed it most, or when you had the chance to be someone else's hero. Because in a world that can sometimes feel overwhelming and divided, we need to remember that the power to change a life, to transform a community, to create lasting positive change exists within each of us. We just have to choose to use it. Thank you for watching, and remember, we're all riding together on this journey called life. Let's make sure nobody has to ride alone.